Hello and welcome to another episode of Scotland Rugby News Podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg-Shaped, and him from Scotland Rugby News, editor extraordinaire, Gavin Harper. How are you, sir?
Very well, Bruce. Very well. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm a wee bit worried, though, because there doesn't seem to be much to talk about again. We've got another one of the days where all's quiet in Scottish rugby. There's nothing happening. So I was trying to think, how do we fill our time today?
Isn't it great when just you have the week before the start of the season, just a nice calm build up?
So I thought we'd probably just talk about the weather because it's blue sky and sunshine. And I bumped it. There's a lady who lives across the street from me, and every day she goes and gets her messages. And usually we chat about the weather. And today she did that Scottish thing where we said good morning. I said, blue sky and sunshine, got to be happy with that. And what did she say?
She wasn't happy.
No, she said it'll not last. You gotta love Scottish folk. You've gotta love Scottish folk. It's like, can't I just enjoy it? It'll not last.
Well, so, it pours with rain, and we're not happy about that.
I know.
It's weather like this, and I'm moaning that I need factor 50 to even go to the shops.
So, I've drunk a lot of coffee today, big man, and everybody's wanted to drink it outside, and I left the house without a bunnet. So,
no good.
It's actually looking okay, but one of my cups of coffee was with Rona Lloyd.
Very good.
Had a
great result for them at the weekend. That was some try she scored.
It was. She was away home to pack because being Rona Lloyd, she's not packed anything before leaving for South Africa tomorrow.
So I'm really pleased that having coffee with you was higher on the priority list than packing for WXV.
Well, she knew I was paying. And you know how much Scottish female rugby players love a cup of coffee.
They do I think Scottish rugby players in general quite enjoy coffee, to be fair.
Yeah. No, it was nice. It was good to see her. Listen, we'll get to that, but I think we have to go hot off the press. John Jeffrey. Now, you're going to have to explain this to me. I love rugby. I didn't love politics, and there's a lot of it I don't particularly understand. So, fill me in.
So, John Jeffrey is Vice Chairman of World Rugby as it stands and was in the run-in to be Chairman at the end of Bill Beaumont's term later this year. Basically, today, kind of, I suppose out the blue, he has withdrawn because he's lost the support of the Scottish Rugby Union Board, which basically he is saying then means it's there is no point. They've withdrawn his candidacy, so he's out the running. He's also a representative on the Six Nations Committee. He stood down from that and has basically said in interviews with Scotland Rugby News and others that he feels basically betrayed and is chucking his kind of involvement in rugby altogether and is away back to the farm and the borders. Hopefully that is the crux of the issue in 30 seconds.
Well, so talk me through Chairman of World Rugby. Obviously, when Bill Beaumont got in, that was not without controversy because it looked like there was maybe a new broom coming in with who was opposing him, but Bill Beaumont got in. And I'm not sure, what does the Chairman of World Rugby do?
I think it's a good question. I think it's obviously, when Bill took the role ahead of Guston Pichot, who was seen as the kind of left field, a bit more kind of out there, if you like. I think that was maybe a vote for the old kind of rugby blazerati rather than let's attempt to make kind of radical change to the sport. It's obviously the sport's most important job in that they are the head man of the global organisation, global governing body. But I think given that JJ had been vice chair and he was essentially favourite to take this job and was expected to not have too many hurdles. I think there would have been some opposition. There's 3 or 4 other candidates, but this has certainly come as a big surprise.
Right. So I'm struggling because World Rugby has a CEO, Scottish Rugby has a CEO, but we still have this other kind of entity, this other body that sits alongside a CEO who's a full-time employee who I would think is the one who's doing it and making it happen. But we've got a chairman over here. How did those two things function? Is this, you mentioned Blazerati there? Is this one of those things that it's I been, so it's I going to be?
In short, yes, there is a bit of that. There is a bit of, if you take it from a Scottish Rugby point of view, John McGuigan is the chair of the board and not the chief executive of, if you like, Scottish Rugby, the business. So in the same way, World Rugby has a chief executive who runs the commercial, the business side of things, and then there is a board who look after the competitions that are under World Rugby's auspices, the World Cup, all those WXV.
So this is, they do business, you do rugby. And this is one of the things that's lobbed at people, that the business people don't understand rugby, and the rugby people, and that, neither of these are particularly true. The rugby people don't understand business. But this is one of those kind of hangovers from the game being amateur, that the game still has a lot of those beliefs and values that somebody needs to be looking after the game. Now, I don't know if you saw the interview with the Liverpool goalkeeper who was talking about, why are we getting more games, basically? If you ask the players, we didn't want more games. And the more I hear of world leagues and teams coming into competitions and we're changing the competition, I'm not sure who's looking after the game.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I think you worry that it all is, at the end of the day, elite sports there to make money, and that is going to drive the sort of need for new competition.
You're going to get me started on games outside international windows again with that comment.
And you're absolutely, that is part of it. That, the element of that, does Scotland need to be playing 4 senior autumn internationals plus an A game? It's a debate for another day, but that obviously is driven by, okay, well, we can get 7,000 in to watch Scotland A play Chile in a non-cap on a Saturday night at the Hive, and how many of those people are going to come back on the Sunday and watch Scotland in a capped international play Australia at Murrayfield? That is not, yes, there's an element of that'll help develop players, but ultimately, let's not kid ourselves on. The finances help massively by having, growing up, I always remember the Autumn Internationals being 3 games. And it was, 20 years ago, it was the 2 of these.
Youngster, when I was a lad, Zimbabwe. When I was a lad, yeah.
And this is it. 20 years ago, 2 of those games were at Murrayfield, and one of them was somewhere else, whether it was Aberdeen or Kilmarnock or...
Don't mention Tonga at Pittodrie.
No, never ever mention Tonga at Pittodrie. But so the fact that we're now playing 4 games at Murrayfield, clearly, that, to get back on the point, clearly there is a financial reason behind all these things. You don't want to be paying for renting out other stadiums, and you can fill Murrayfield for 4 games.
So one of the things that I've seen people comment on, and I don't know if they're coming for any point of knowledge or authority, there was a feeling that, why would you not support JJ? Because surely it's better having a Scottish person in that role than not having a Scottish person in that role. So I'm confused as to where that's gone. It's a bit like we just want a referee at the World Cup. Like we need because we need representation. and having a Scotsman in that, having Bill Beaumont there must have been good for England, having Bill Beaumont in that position. It was great for the reruns of Question of Sport on Dave. So it must have been good for English rugby. Having John Jeffrey there. Now, I don't know. I've met John Jeffrey. I watched him play rugby. He was a hero when I was a kid. I don't know if that's the role for him. But it seems odd that we're not supporting one of our own.
Yes, I think that is very much the feeling from what I can gather today is that he feels very, very betrayed at the fact that Scottish Rugby have kind of turned their back on one, as you say, one of their own. A 1990 Grand Slam legend, somebody who was involved in the kind of upper echelons of the SRU until stepping down to focus on his role with World Rugby. So, yeah, it does very much feel like, why would you? I think John Jeffries used the phrase today, shoot yourself in the foot, in reference to the way Scottish Rugby has kind of acted, because ultimately now there won't be a Scotsman in that kind of position of power. There won't be the benefits, whether they are sizable or otherwise, that Scotland might have had from having one of its own in the top job in World Rugby.
See, and I don't know what the benefits can be, because surely you're not allowed to say, "Oh, by the way, we should all go back to Magath." With the position on the Six Nations Committee, how do you fill that? Is that somebody who's already involved at Scottish Rugby, or can I have a crack at
that? I would probably think that somebody at Scottish Rugby would step forward. Without knowing the ins and outs of that, I think that's how it works, is that basically
somebody on the board steps into that.
Yeah, so somebody on the Scottish Rugby board will step in and fill that space, as far as I understand. However, if there is a vacancy, Bruce, I'm sure your name's high up the list.
I'm in. After upsetting the number of folk I've upset today, I think I'm tailor-made for it.
Have you organised your accommodation with the new chief exec yet?
Do you know what? Big Al, we've moved through Alec to Big Al, hasn't been in touch yet, but we'll get there. I actually was planting some seeds this morning.
It's going to have to. You're going to have to revert to Big Alec, because Big Al's too confusing. I thought you meant Al Kellick there, and I wondered why you were putting him up as well.
It's no, there's not enough room for him. None of the rooms are long enough for him to lie doing it. No, I think it's only a matter of time before Alec gets an audience and he's able to pick my brains. It's only a matter of time.
He's able to pick your brains. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah. Okay. He's going to need to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Undeniably. Just before we continue the JJ discussion, there's a couple of comments coming. It's sad that they haven't backed. JJ says,
"I love Carrie. Yeah, she's so positive. We love Carrie. Good on you, Carrie."
And ultimately, do you know what? Like, I totally agree with that. It is sad that, because to have John Jeffrey as the chairman of World Rugby would have been a bit of a.
And I never know how these things can play out, though, because surely, like, something didn't just happen yesterday. Like, and we didn't need more soap opera. Like, the last thing we need is more soap opera. I was sad when I saw that headline pop up on my timeline. I don't know it. I don't understand it. I can't give any kind of comment other than I don't think we need it. We didn't need it after everything that's going on in Scottish Rugby over the last period of time. That's another sore one to take.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think it's obviously a blow to, it makes Scottish Rugby, not the like rugby in Scotland, if you like, look a bit silly, because here we are at the 11th hour with a guy who in a few months' time would be in the top job, and all of a sudden, I think probably because of personality clashes and historical perceptions, I think there was a feeling from some that JJ was very close to Mark Dodson, and
I know, and these are tough things because the union, I don't know, the Scottish Rugby now, it's difficult for them to speak out. It's always difficult for the organisation. Individuals can speak out, so we can get kind of JJ's story, but it's very difficult for an organisation to pitch their side of it, especially second. So there's, we don't know what's going on. Has gone on, and I don't know we'll ever properly know what's gone on. But it's the dirty laundry in public I'm a bit sad about.
Yeah, and I agree with that. If you think back to 2019 World Cup, in the midst of the typhoon hitting Japan, and not 72 hours later, Scottish Rugby were threatening legal action because the game against Japan, ultimately we were well beaten in, was under threat. And yeah, look, it's just unnecessary. There are so many instances over the last probably 4 or 5 years that, if you think about the Gregor and Finn falling out,
And these a bit like we said last week, every union has it. Every union has these things. It's just it hurts because it's ours. England are struggling. Coaches turnover in England. Players being away from England. Like Wales has not got its troubles to see. Every union has its stories because it's people and it's relationships. I'm just sad it's mine that's being negatively spoken about again. I want some goals scored. I want some good things to happen. Have you got any more so we can move on? Because otherwise I'm going to start crying here.
I do, yes. The SRU should hang its head in shame, says William Patterson. Yeah, I think you'll see a lot. If you look at Scotland Rugby News on social media, I think there are a lot of comments that say something kind of pretty similar to that. I think the strength of feeling is strong, that somebody like John Jeffrey, who seems to have been well respected and in these roles for a number of years, has been kind of let down at the 11th hour, if you like. And this one, I think, is interesting. Folk can't complain about jobs for the boys, and then the next complain about decisions that go against that when the SRU have said it was based on a previous track record. I think that's interesting because the SRU haven't said it was based on previous track record. They haven't actually said anything. And I think that probably points, Bruce, to your point. It's very easy in these circumstances for us to hear John Jeffrey's side of the story. I think probably we will never hear the full representation of a Scottish Rugby Union point of view. And that is ultimately just the way these things work.
Yeah. I think we've got a lot of really strong people, really strong leaders involved in Scottish Rugby. They've not necessarily got caps and medals to gain that instant kind of impact, but there's so many people putting in time, energy, effort, their knowledge, their experience, and yes, a lot of them do get compensated for it, and there's obvious benefits. Otherwise, nobody would do it. And folk chuck money at chuck mud at people making money, but there's not many people who do it for nothing. That thing of, I would play for Scotland for nothing. Well, you would, but you'd probably only do it once because somebody's going to have to pay your bill. So, these a lot of these jobs, a lot of the people who are willing to chuck mud are not volunteering at the rugby club, or they're not, so I just have to have a bit of caution with it. I'm not really able to comment because I don't properly understand it. I'm just a bit sad. But let's go with some happy news, big fella, because
just before we do that, Bruce, I think there is a piece just been published on the Scotland Rugby News site that is basically every word from John Jeffrey. Spoke at the Braid Hills Hotel in Edinburgh today. And if folk are interested in this in much more detail than we're going to go into here, every word of what he said is now on the site, so folk can have a look there and see what he's saying. There's some pretty strong stuff in that, and clear emotion from him.
Okay, well, I need to have a read of that. So listen, big fella, it was an absolute joy to be at the Hive on Saturday to see Scotland women just, talking of good news stories. For them to go fifth in the world, and we can, Fiji weren't the opposition, right? But you can only beat what's in front of you. You can only beat the teams that are going to come and play. Fiji came, great atmosphere, Fijian supporters as ever, smiling, singing, willing to engage. It was class. Loads of families. Scotland put in I spoke to Brian Eason after. It's really difficult because the way Fiji play make it really difficult to get structure, to know what's coming next. The whistle blew quite a lot. It was a kind of weird game. But as an event, as an occasion, Taylor Wynyard delivering the match ball and then getting a hug for Rachel Malcolm, class little moment. And then afterwards, the players took forever to get down that tunnel. But we've all seen the videos, the singing on the pitch and then the Kaylee dancing in, like, so much to be really happy and positive about.
And you know what? Like, there's a great graphic doing the rounds on social media that in March 23, they were 11th in the world, and to have gone from 11th to 5th in like less than 18 months, I think shows the improvements in the squad, but it also shows that actually they've been through a fair amount.
A lot.
In that, they lost 12 games in a row before they kind of sparked on this winning run, and they've won like 10 in the last 13.
I know, and like when they were playing at Broadwood, it wasn't are they going to win? It was like, do you think they'll get a try? Like, do you think they'll score?
Can they score a point? Can they?
It was really tough.
And like, during the Six Nations, Megan Gaffney was writing a column for us, and she was saying, I remember when we were a warm up for the men's under 20s at Broadwood on like a Friday night, and they were on at like 5 o'clock. There was literally nobody there, and you think, to see where it's going and actually with the same players, there's probably a lot of these players, your Ronas, Lisa Thompson, Emma Wassell,
Sarah Bonner, Ellen Nelson, Chloe Rowley, Lana Skeldon. There's a lot of them have been through it.
But some of them must be, I think Lisa and Rona won their first caps at Broadwood in a Six Nations, probably in front of their parents, a few other parents, and not much more. And they must be pinching themselves now, thinking, "Well, hang on a minute, we're fifth in the world. We're basically the best of the rest outside the sort of top, the top teams who are miles in front in terms of professionalism, and we've had a sellout at the Hive. We get decent crowds now almost every game, and now they're going to WXV. Well, that was Fiji was the biggest win in a century, and you're saying, well, actually now they can go to WXV with the prospect of winning their second trophy in 2 years. If you offered that to the men's team, to any Scottish team, if you sat Franco or Sean Everett down and said, look, in the next 2 years you'll win 2 trophies, folk would bite your hand off for it. Wow. So look, it's testament to the work, I think, that Brian Eason, Rachel Malcolm, etc. have done.
It was interesting. When I was speaking to Rona today, and we were chewing the fat about various things, but she was saying, I think Rachel Malcolm's just getting better and better and better. And my point to Rona was, I think you're all getting better and better. And one of the reasons is you've stopped being grateful for your lot. You were almost apologetic for what was going on. And that was kind of the atmosphere. And, it was tough for the coaches because it was an amateur program playing against some not necessarily professional programs, but more professional programs. And I said to her, I just feel like she was talking about the shirts and how they now get a shirt for the games. Now, I know a fair bit about the game and I know a lot of the players involved. I didn't realise they only got one shirt for the season. I didn't know that. So they've never been able to swap a shirt. Like
And
I never knew that. And I know that doesn't really matter. But now they're at a point where they're getting closer to having the things that we kind of take for granted and just accept because the men's game have had that for a long time.
And look, I think there's an element of you're absolutely right. Individually, names on the shirts and the embroidering on the match shirts, these are I don't want to call them trivial, but they're small details that in isolation you say, okay, they've got names on the jerseys, yeah, fine, whatever. That's the men have had that for a couple of seasons. But when you put it all together, it just accelerates the growth of the whole thing, because you might have, we've talked loads of times about, in fact, we talked to Brian about, it's wrong to compare going to Murrayfield and watch the Scotland men and go, it's the whole thing's different, and it should be, and I think this is where there's probably some work to do. It should be packaged differently. It should be packaged to a completely different audience, and I think you've talked at length about being there with your wife, your girls. That's the audience. That's where there's a real market to tap into for women's sport. And I think
there was a couple. You're right, and sorry to butt in, but do you know one of the things that I noticed on Saturday that I've never noticed before? When you go an Edinburgh game, there's always boys running about with a ball. Like, how funny is it? The stuff you can't take into a stadium, but you're allowed to take a rugby ball. Yeah. Like I remember buying a juice at Murrayfield years ago, and the women took the lid off it. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And so you didn't throw it. Went, What? Yeah, you can take a rugby ball in. Like, that's meant that you could kick that on the pitch and cause all kinds of bother. You could chuck it. But there was the thing I loved as I was walking in. There was 3 girls chucking a rugby ball about, and you should have seen the spin pass on one of them. Unreal. It turned out my wife knew them, but I was like, that's a moment that I would love the social media cameras to have been outside, for clipping it to put it, because it was the most normal thing in the world. They were just chucking a ball about, and they were going to watch a women's game of rugby at the Hive that they paid for tickets, and they're adults. I don't know who they were, but they were taking them, and it's beginning to feel normal.
But I think, you're 100% right. It does feel more normal, and it does feel like these players and that team have built up their own fan base. That's a separate fan base. There will be massive crossover, of course, but there are separate fans who would only probably go to the Hive and watch the women. And there was great clips of, in fact, I think it was Rona and Rachel McLachlan after the Wales game saying, like, who's your favourite player? And almost every single person picked out an individual player. It's really easy to say, I have everybody, because if you're not 100% sure, folk will say, I like the whole team. But actually, to say, like, Sarah Bonner's my favourite player, Alex Stewart, Katie Mattinson, whoever it is.
See, whenever I've interviewed the girls, and you say to them, who was your favourite player growing up? It had to be a male.
Yeah.
Because they were their idols. They didn't know the Scotland internationals. And one of the best bits about Saturday, and Rachel Malcolm's spoken about this, that there was a lot of emotion around, let's do this for Was. And she was there, doing her assistant manager duties and taking photos and all that kind of stuff. But she was there. She spoke to everybody, big smile, gave everybody time, supported the team, same on the way back through. But when I was chatting to her at the end, like, and this is not apologetic, but just they're still so very humble. And she said, I was chatting to her and somebody shouted Emma, and she turned around and went, yeah, I've got to get used to it. It's not me they're shouting now, it's Emma Orr, because she's the superstar. I was like, I love it. It's just, I don't love it because it's not actually always true, but how cool that they're, and I think she put on her social media about how much she loves this team, because Rachel had said, look, emotional performance. Let's do it for Was, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes that stuff blows back in your face. But on Saturday, you know, she was included. She was there, and it's obviously important to them. And WXV is going to be tough for her not to be there.
Yeah, and that's it. Look, that anecdote is very true, but there is a serious side. There's clearly been a really difficult few weeks for her, a really difficult few months for Emma Wassell. I think you see the strength of the group in the way that they have, as teammates, but also as mates, they've kind of rallied round. I think she lives with Rachel Malcolm.
They're all,
but they've all taken it kind of upon themselves to make sure that environment is as good a place for her to be as and it would be quite easy to say, look, she's going to be involved, and that's a tick box gesture, a token gesture, but it didn't feel like that, and you always get the impression that they do more than just that. So yeah, look, it will be tough for them, but I think we talked about this squad not having any shortage of kind of motivators over the last couple of years, certainly, and that'll be another one. They'll.
Yeah.
When we spoke to Brian a couple of weeks ago, he said that. Well, when I spoke to him before he was on the pod, he said that winning it wasn't really the focus. But look, everybody wants to win stuff, and
of course
that maybe has changed that.
It was interesting. There was so many little bits on Saturday, like when the bomb squad came on. I saw Ellis Martin today, who passed her driving test. So congratulations, Ellis! First time as well, so she claims. But when the three of them came on, it was just that was quite a cool little moment. You could see they were buzzing to get on, and the crowd gave everybody a massive cheer. And when Evie Gallagher pops that ball to Lucia Scott, that's gold. That is absolute gold. There's another little, just here's the environment we've got.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Like, it would have been. I actually thought Lucia Scott was unlucky not to score on her debut against Wales.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, it was a walk-in. Like, Evie Gallagher could have run at my pace and she'd have still scored. So actually, to say, do you know what? Here you go, second cap, go and score a try for Scotland.
Class.
Like, so yeah, it's all those wee moments, isn't it, that make the environment, and you can tell how loads of folk, men and women, talk about togetherness on the pitch and off. But I actually think this squad has that in that.
Yeah, it's not forced. It's not. It's not just something they talk about.
And I saw something online that said, like, let's not judge it by women's sport or men's sport. I think Rachel Malcolm is one of the best captains in sport. And, how many teams have had captains that were just there for their leadership, but actually she does so much on the pitch as well that, yeah, I think, as you say, they're all getting better. And it can only be a good thing for Scottish rugby.
Yeah, and there's Rachel McLaughlin on Saturday. I saw her today as well. I said, how's the body? And straight away, Ellis Martin went 27 tackles. I mean, Rachel McLaughlin was also relentless. The depth they've got there, Jade getting to start. We could go on forever, big fella, but it just was such a positive thing to be part of. I'm still a bit sad. I think the crowds for both of those games, I would have liked to have seen more folk there. But, maybe I need to be a bit more sympathetic or realistic. I don't know what the term is, but it would be great to get more folk to experience it because it was so good.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, the crowd, particularly, I watched the Fiji game on TV, but the crowd for the Wales game wasn't what we had kind of expected. It wasn't certainly what you and I thought. I think that was disappointing. I think that is maybe a victim of the fact that there is now so much rugby. And there's other stuff going on at this time of the year. Look, let's hope that come the Six Nations, we're talking about 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 folk in the Hive on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah,
because I think the team now, the on the pitch stuff actually merits those numbers. But yeah, it's be interesting to see how they got on in South Africa, and it's a big few weeks for them.
Yeah, best of luck to the squad. Safe travels, and I'm gutted it's in South Africa, but at least it's the same kind of time zone, so we can get a decent watch of it. But it'd be amazing to come back with that. So URC kicks off. Let's start with Glasgow, reigning champions. I'm divided on this one. I can't make up my mind if it's going to be tougher because the Glasgow cannot be taken lightly, or if there's a little bit of, well, it's Glasgow, we can kind of concede a little bit there. But Glasgow have got to be aiming top 4.
Oh yeah, I mean, without a doubt, I think the bar of, we talked about this when they won the league, the bar of expectation now has been risen probably immeasurably from what they would have expected. I think top 4, like for me, top 4, probably top 2 is the bar that they're looking at, and I think that's where Franco will need a squad, because the 15, the 23 that won the final, it won't be about all season. So he's going to need 30, 40 players to all put their hand up, to all contribute to.
Well, do you know? Here's my worry for Glasgow. Sander Fagerson. That's my worry. If the Latin, we go through this one a lot in 4 years, but if the Lions were leaving on Saturday, Sander Fagerson would be going.
And I think,
but he's now, between now and that flight leaving for the Lions, he's going to play a lot of rugby because he's so important to Glasgow and Scotland.
Yes. Like 100%, can't disagree with any of that. He is, I think, Finn and Xander deserve to be on a par in terms of their importance to the national team, and I don't think Xander gets. I think if Xander played in the Gallagher Premiership, he would be talked about an awful lot more than he is because he's still at Glasgow. I think, and that's probably a fact of life that we've seen with Finn, with Hoggy, with Johnny Gray, with Sean Maitland, going even further back. I think he's probably, they are Scotland's two most important players. He's Glasgow's most important player. Glasgow don't have anybody that's of the level, and that's no disrespect to Murphy Walker or Schickerling or Finn Richardson, or Sam Talakai, but Xander's head and shoulders above the other three. And I think the point you make is interesting because the way the sort of protocol works, Franco was explaining this after one of the pre-season games. The Scotland internationals can't play 5 games in a row.
Yeah.
So they'll have to pick and choose the games they rest him really carefully because he's so important to them. So you look at games like, and again, Dragons at home, Zebra at home, like those are the types of games where Xander needs to just be sitting in the stand. I think the fact that Glasgow...
Did he sit up in the stand? Give a week holiday. Go to the sunshine, Xander. Put your feet up, big fella.
Sunshine. Please don't do anything for a week. But I think the fact that Glasgow have got 3 other tight heads suggests to me that Franco knows, look, this could be a big 12 months. We need to really manage Xander through it because he's going to play an awful lot of rugby for Scotland. Again, with no WP Nell, there's a question mark about who fills that void. And, he could go away and be a test lion in 12 months' time, or 11 months' time. So, yeah, it's interesting, and I think finding that balancing act will be tricky for Franco. But, as you said plenty of times since he arrived a couple of years ago, he's a man with a plan, and he seems to have it all sussed out. And he's talked about this first 5 games being like pre-season almost. So I expect he might look to use a lot of the squad in the first 3 or 4 weeks.
Here's one for you. Xander on the bench. You start one of the other tight heads and they play 30 minutes and then you bring Xander on to play 50. Because one of my worries would be for Glasgow, Xander not playing 80, so you're definitely going to take him off. But can you afford that in a game where maybe that last 20 is crucial? Now, I know you could flip that and go, well, the first 20 minutes, you're 14 points behind. I get that. But Xander, and maybe if you put on one of the other tight heads and they're going all right, they go until half time. And then Xander only plays 40 minutes. Or I don't know, but I just wonder, there's been a few when Razzie picks his team and you think, is he not playing his best team at any point over those 80 minutes? Is he making sure they're at 95% for 80 minutes? I don't know.
Look, you're right. And I think all of these things will come into consideration. When Murphy Walker played his first game back, when Glasgow went to South Africa before the playoffs, I think he played half an hour, and Franco said, yeah, that was always the idea, was to give him half an hour, first game back, take him off. And I think they did put Xander on. And I think the week after he played 40 minutes just to kind of build up that match time. And so I think all of these things will come into consideration. Franco likes the 6-2 bench. How does that work in terms of players' minutes and people having to play out of position and all? The makeup of the midfield is going to be interesting, with clearly Sione and Hugh will be first choice, but is Tom Jordan a 12 now that Adam's back and playing 10?
I was going to say, there's been a wee bit of chat about Adam Hastings over the last little while. I'm really interested to see how that goes, because you've already mentioned Finn. So who do you play? Ben Healy and Ross Thompson are both at Edinburgh. Adam Hastings at Glasgow. So with Adam Hastings, is he going to play most games?
And again, knowing Franco, it's hard to commit to saying yes to that, because he rotates that squad so much that you feel like Tom Jordan could be flipping between 12 and 10. Adam might play 60% of the games, but I can't see him.
You've already said Franco likes a 6-2 bench, so having Tom Jordan playing at 12 means he can go to 10, because that with Scotland, with Finn and Xander to a certain extent, you've got 2 of your 8 on the bench that you're maybe only breaking glass in case of an emergency. Yeah. And when you see how other teams use a bench, can you afford to have somebody who's not? So does Blair start at 15 and you don't carry a 10 on the bench for Scotland because you're not going to take Finn off? So the break glass in case of emergency is Blair Kinghorn goes to 10 and there's some kind of shuffle in the back 3, or the bench covers 15. Kyle Rowe we spoke to and is able to play wing, play fullback. Hugh Jones has played 15. I'm really interested to see how some of these things play out, because it's almost like you've got this group of players. How do you get the best ones on the pitch at the best time to get the best out of them?
And I think the thing from a Glasgow point of view with Franco is going to be expect the unexpected. Expect people who maybe a lot of folk haven't heard of to put their hand up in training, to put their hand up. There've been a few impressive performances, although the results weren't there in pre-season. Don't be surprised if there are a couple of names that stick out when that team's named for the game on Saturday from Friday lunchtime.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. So let's come along the road. Edinburgh, Leinster at home, then off to South Africa. there's loads I'm interested in to see there, because at this point, I know there's players unavailable, but you'd be expecting Sean Everett to play his cards, and this will give us an insight into who he thinks his strongest 15 is.
Yeah, I would think there's probably a couple of positions. The midfield's maybe one that's up for a bit of debate. That, and obviously injury to Sam Skinner means there's a gap in the second row. But I think I definitely got the feeling from that Gloucester friendly that the first half team felt like his strongest 15, and he was easing guys like Buffelli back into the way of things. But I think what will be interesting is, have the performances from some of the guys there altered that thinking in a week in any way, and how you balance that, because ultimately, we talked about the first 4 games, Leinster, 2 in South Africa, and then the Stormers at home, is as tough a start as you could possibly have wished for. So again, I think he's going to need to make changes in amongst all that. We spoke to Ben Velicott last week. How does Ben marry up with one of the 10s, Ross Thompson? What's the combination like there? It was great to see Darcy back fit. I think that's probably the one thing you take away from that Gloucester game is, like, Darcy gives Edinburgh something that they so badly missed last season, and getting him fit. And he's another one that I remember Richard Cockrell saying, "Look, don't be surprised, but this guy Darcy Graham can be a British Lion one day." And with a run of, you just don't want to put too much expectation on Darcy because he's had such a terrible run, but like, he can be that good. That
yeah, he's world class. He does things that it's a struggle to see other players doing. He's not physical, but you'd like to think with the Lions going to Australia, I could maybe get a game on the wing. The way things are going in Australia at the moment. Anyway, let's skirt over that one. There's a whole load of stuff. I'm interested to see the makeup of the forward pack. I think I could probably pick it. 9, I think Ben Velicott being made co-captain is pretty much a statement to say Ben Velicott starts as our 9 or as our first choice 9 when it matters. 10, I'm really interested to see, because I think that because Ben Healy does not want to give that up, but Ross Thompson hasn't come along the road to be second choice. So I'm really interested to see, and having only had a half each, I don't know how you kind of make the call on that.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't see them in training. Well, I don't. And then in centres, the makeup there, I think Matt Scott and Tuipulotu are probably 12s, and Mark Bennett and Matt Curry are 13s, but that wasn't quite how maybe things played out. The wingers, we could probably pick, it's Duan and Darcy. And then 15, you got Wes Houston, Emiliano. There's going to be some disappointed boys this week, I think.
Yeah, and look, like, was Brian Easton said it, plenty of coaches have said it, I'm sure you'll know this from coaching. Like, pre-season's great, but actually this is when the hard work starts, because this is when you start having to drop folk or not select folk, and this is when you're dealing with players who have worked incredibly hard for 2 months to get themselves into decent shape and try and get in the team, and all of a sudden, there will be disappointment this week for both teams. So yeah, look, I think it's a challenge, but I think
there's even more in the mix though for Glasgow and Edinburgh that certainly I've never had to deal with. There's boys whose contracts will be up. There's boys who want to be Lions. There's boys who want to be in that Scotland squad or Argentina squad or whatever squad it is they're playing. So we're all selfish beasts, really. Yes, we want the best for the team and yada yada yada, but I can only look after me. So both squads, I could pick their 15 today, and it's not going to be the 15 that Franco and Sean pick. Because I'm not seeing what they're seeing, and obviously I didn't have to, but it's going to be a real eye-opener, these two selections.
Yeah, and I think, given that they are reasonably, well, Edinburgh is a really tough, but they're both tough starts, and I think that we've talked about there's no easy game in the URC, but I think they'll need to hit the ground running. I think there'll be a lot of relying on, particularly from Edinburgh, relying on big game players, kind of their more senior players, because they've only had that one pre-season hit out, so they'll not be as cohesive as they might have been otherwise.
The Gloucester game, Gloucester started at a lick. Like they were, the tempo Gloucester arrived at, I thought, this could be sore. Edinburgh's defence held out. The second half, they had to guts it out, and you said right at the beginning of the Edinburgh bit, you felt that was not their first choice. So for that, that's a strong message to send to Sean. Listen, they're not crossing this line. And then in attack, there was some little bits that you just thought, whoa, they're ready to go here. And there was one that I love, and I don't know why more teams don't do it, the shape for the box kick, and then they moved it. I love seeing that, because as soon as you see that caterpillar ruck and the 9 gets set, you're like, oh no. You're already turning your shoulders, you're on your way back. 15's getting a bit closer to the blind winger. 9's kind of dropped in the pocket, and then boom, away we go. And it's like, yes, go for it. And like you said, pre-season, everyone's a winner, but maybe a sign of things to come.
And look, for the first few weeks of the season, certainly Edinburgh will benefit from the fact that they have built a reputation as being a team that doesn't score enough tries and is probably not that exciting to watch. If you put if somebody asked you, Glasgow are a better team to watch than Edinburgh based on last season, because Glasgow score loads of tries and their games are really open, Edinburgh's are less so. So I think certainly for the first few weeks, it'd be interesting to see if Edinburgh try little things like that, or, wee intricacy tap penalty moves, or whatever it might be.
Please have more tap penalty moves. Please, all teams. This is a plea from me, whether you're the URC or East Division 2, stop kicking for lineouts.
Do you know, and on that point, I saw in the Scotland game on Saturday, I think they won a penalty about 5 metres sort of from the posts, and Lisa Thompson kicked a touch, and I thought, I can just picture Mr. Aitchison sitting in the stand, and he will be going bananas.
Yeah, again, my daughters realised their dad knows nothing, because I'm going, they're going to tap and play here. Watch it, they're going to tap and play here. And Lisa kicks it to the corner, and Katie just looked at me as if to say, thought you knew this game. You talk about this a lot. You obviously know nothing. You know absolutely nothing. Now, listen, I think URC coming back, it's a tough league. But if this time next week when we're chatting, if Glasgow and Edinburgh have got wins, wow, like what a start to beat Ulster away and Leinster at home. That's a great start. And, that trip to South Africa begins to feel like the Venga bus, and it's a bit happier.
Yeah, it's certainly a bit happier. I don't know if it's quite the Venga bus, but it's certainly quite but look, if Edinburgh can pick up a couple of, say they beat Leinster, a couple of points in South Africa here and there, it's not the worst start in the world. Like, I think the league is so competitive that going 4 from 4 in those games is the dream, but let's be realistic, but where Edinburgh finished last year, if they're sitting mid-table after the first 4 games, they should consider that a success, I think.
I mean, folk like me and you can sit here and predict, and but we've got no clue what's going to happen, because one of the other things that you throw into the mix, all of a sudden referee cards somebody and the whole game goes out the window, and any of your predictions makes no sense at all. And that, Scotland could go into WXV and somebody gets a red card for a high tackle, and all of a sudden we lose to somebody that's whatever position in the world rankings, and your fifth means now.
But what I would say to that is, I think this idea that red cards mean you automatically concede the game is not true.
It's only a matter of time before that gets introduced as a trial variation or a law trial. Right. If you get a red card, we're now going to say the other team wins because you've been naughty.
But 20-minute red card. I mean, we're digressing here. 20-minute red cards, not for me.
Well, see,
but
okay.
That's definitely one for another day.
Yes, and that other day is in the future. Big fella, any other business?
I don't think so. Here's what
I'm going to tell you. Excellent. The new Murrayfield Wanderers defence coach, what an impact, because they nilled the opposition at the weekend. So, like, if I had a hat on, I'd take it off them. Fair play.
Incredible work. Incredible. He's obviously been a hard graft pre-season.
The impact.
Poor Murrayfield Wanderers boys having to listen to him.
And they're at your joint on Saturday. They're at Haddington on Saturday.
I'll pass any comment, having not seen Haddington live yet this season, but results have not been good. But I would say I was gutted because I was off duty last Saturday, and there was a message flying about to play for the second 15, which is like my dream Saturday afternoon, and I couldn't make it. And I was gutted because I quite fancy putting my boots on maybe one or two more times.
Well, I played netball on Sunday and I'm still sore. Dominated again. Absolutely.
Another defensive masterclass?
Use me, I'm fresh. I was actually mostly wing attack. I was utilised in the attacking thirds on Sunday rather than the defensive chores. Tell you what, the assist rate just went whoosh. Do you know who I bumped into today talking about poor starts to seasons?
You've had an incredibly busy day.
I tell you what, that coffee doesn't drink itself, big fella. That coffee doesn't drink itself. I bumped into Cairnsy, Mark Cairns, too hot for curry. Met him today, and he's always so positive. So they've had a stinker with results, but it's going to be all right. So if you're a Curry fan, it's going to be all right. Cairnsy's got it sorted. But class speaking to him. I was speaking to a Kelso player today as well. You know, it's so competitive in clubland at the moment. There's loads going on,
and you know something. There are other teams who look at that Musselburgh result in Ayr on Saturday and think, we don't fancy that. Yeah. You know, and actually, I don't want to say that this time of year doesn't suit Ayr because that's not true. But you know, when the nights get darker and the prospect to go into Millbrae in November, December, January, and they've got a squad that is like, it's basically their Super Series squad, and
it's ready. They've got a squad for all weathers, and that facility is going to look like one of those American football college setups. By the sounds, it's costing about 400 million across there. Derek Stark's been doing the back of the couch and found them some pennies to spend on that. I think Starkey's millions is paid for that. I think.
But you know, like
there's an exclusive for you. Derek Stark bankrolls Ayr redevelopment. It's a total lie, but
I don't think you can just make these things up. Bruce Aitchison to be next Scotland head coach, defence coach.
No. I'm not going. I'm going for chairman. I want to be on this Six Nations panel because that must be some great trips. That's a lot. That's a lot of free dinners.
You've gone back to your coaching clinic trip.
That's a story for another day. I've got loads of those. Me and Stephen Jones, Leo Cullen. Big mates. Listen, Phil, I need to go. My tea's on the table. Great to see you. Look after yourself. I'll maybe see you at the Hive on Friday night. I'll be kind of excited, I think, to get back there. Yeah. But it's been a great chat.
Yeah, always is. I'll see you at the Hive on Friday night before I head off to Belfast on Saturday morning.
It must be tough for your jet set lifestyle. Make sure you sign up. £12 for 12 months. You can get all the exclusives and go and check out all that John Jeffrey stuff, because I'm going to have to read it and see if I can get Argyle and Butte. Do you know something, Derek and Joanne? I'm always suspicious if the couples that share a Facebook account, Derek and Joanne, come on, because sometimes we're not a big fan of that. Argyle and Butte, what a club. Beautiful. I'll come if you get me a helicopter. I'll do it. And I'm still waiting for my invite to your end of season dinner, Derek and Joanne. I wonder who posted that. I bet it was Joanne.
Do you think so?
Joanne's. I'm not sure Derek's got control of that. I bet Joanne's not giving Derek the password.
Hopefully we got a follow-up comment that confirms or denies.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it's likely going to happen when we're off air. So, but please don't DM me any abuse, right? I think Argyle and Butte, what a cracking job. What a job. Imagine working at Argyle and Butte. I didn't realise we'd become a vacancies page.
No, neither did I, but we'll take any and all engagement.
Is there not a wee message for Ian Noble to be put up there?
There is a message from Ian Noble that says the Merky bus says hi.
Ian Noble, the silent assassin, what a boy. Merky have been up playing the second round of the Scottish Schools Cup in Aberdeen, so they're on their way back after a decent win. So hello to the old boys, especially Mr. Deans, my hero and proper man crush. How hot's Roddy Deans? Frightening. Frightening. We both at the same place, but my paper round was a lot harder than his. Right, big fella. It's been a pleasure.
Happy note, we'll call it a day.
Yeah, chips and him. See you later, pal. All the best. See you next week.